The champagne flute felt cold against my palm as I stood in the center of the Metropolitan Art Gallery, surrounded by glittering chandeliers and the murmur of New York's elite. I had just won the bidding war for a stunning contemporary piece, $75,000 going straight to a children's hospital charity. The auctioneer's gavel still echoed in my ears when my phone buzzed against the silk lining of my clutch. I glanced down at the screen, expecting a congratulatory text from a colleague. Instead, my father's name glowed back at me. The message was short, brutal, and displayed large enough for the woman standing next to me to read, "Don't contact us. Don't come near, you're on your own now." Before I could process the words, another notification pinned itself to my screen. My sister Serafina had already screenshot the message and posted it to her Instagram story with a heart emoji and the caption, "Sometimes toxic trees need to be cut down." The post was live. 200,000 followers were watching my family publicly disown me in real time. The gallery went quiet in my mind, though the party continued around me. I felt every eye in the room shift toward me as phones lit up across the venue. Instead, something cold and clear settled over me like a sheet of ice. I typed back with steady fingers, "Perfect. I'll cancel all automatic payments tomorrow morning. Good luck with self-sufficiency." I dropped my phone back into my clutch, lifted my chin, and walked out of that gallery with my head high, leaving behind the flash of cameras and the stunned silence of people who had just witnessed the beginning of a war. But before I tell you what happened next, I need you to do me a favor. If you're listening to this story and you've ever felt used, exploited, or taken for granted by people who should have loved you, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel because I'm going to tell you exactly how I took my life back. And comment below if you've ever had to cut ties with toxic family members. Your story matters, and I promise you're not alone. Now let me take you back to the beginning because this didn't start with that text message. It started years before, hidden in plain sight, and I was too caught up in survival to see the pattern forming. The pattern started early. When I was 10 and Serafina was 3, I saved up my allowance for 6 months to buy myself a bicycle. The day I brought it home, Serafina cried because she wanted one too. My mother gave her mine and told me I was old enough to understand sharing. When I protested, my father called me selfish. I learned then that my wants didn't matter as much as Serafina's feelings. By the time I was in high school, I was working part-time jobs while maintaining a 4 gigapascals. I paid for my own SAT prep courses, my own college application fees, my own prom dress. Meanwhile, Serafina got a brand new car for her 16th birthday and never worked a day in her life. When I asked why they couldn't help me with college expenses, my father said I was more capable and didn't need the help. That was his way of saying I wasn't worth the investment. I got into Columbia on a partial scholarship and worked 3 jobs to cover the rest. I studied finance and graduated summa cum laude. By 25, I was working at a top investment firm in Manhattan, pulling in a 6-figure salary. By 30, I had my own apartment in Tribeca, a closet full of designer suits, and a reputation as one of the sharpest financial analysts in the city. I had made it on my own, and I was proud of that. But my family saw my success differently. They saw an ATM machine. It started small. My mother called one day saying they needed help with property taxes. $5,000. I sent it. Then my father needed a loan for a business deal that fell through. $20,000. I sent that too. Serafina needed tuition for a private arts college where she was studying social media marketing. $40,000 a year for 4 years. I paid every semester. The requests never stopped. Car repairs, medical bills, home renovations, my mother's church donations, my sister's photography equipment for her Instagram influencer career. Every time I hesitated, I was reminded of family loyalty, of how they had raised me, of how successful I was, and how little they asked for in return. Except it wasn't little. Over the course of 8 years, I had given my family over $400,000. I had delayed buying my own home. I had put off traveling. I had ended a relationship with Caleb Thorne, a wonderful man and a brilliant lawyer, because I didn't have time for romance when I was working 80-hour weeks to support 2 households. The worst part was how they treated me despite everything I gave. Family dinners were performances where Serafina showed off her latest sponsored post while I sat quietly in the corner. My mother bragged about Serafina's 50,000 Instagram followers but never mentioned my promotions at work. My father took credit for my success, telling people at church that his guidance had shaped my career, conveniently forgetting that he'd told me business school was a waste of time for a woman. I told myself I was helping. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself they would appreciate it eventually. But deep down in a place I didn't want to examine too closely, I knew I was buying something I would never receive. I was buying love, approval, recognition, and the price kept going up. Thanksgiving of 2023 was the beginning of the end. I had flown home to Cedar Hollow, bringing expensive wine and gifts for everyone. I had just closed a major deal at work and received a $100,000 bonus. I was exhausted but happy, looking forward to a quiet family dinner. Instead, I walked into chaos. Serafina was in tears because a brand deal had fallen through. My mother was consoling her while simultaneously planning an elaborate Christmas party to lift her spirits. My father barely acknowledged my arrival, too busy on the phone trying to fix whatever crisis Serafina's management team was handling. When I sat down at the dinner table, I expected someone to ask about my bonus, my deal, my life. Instead, my father turned to me and said, "Aurora, we need to talk about Christmas. Serafina's party is going to cost about $50,000. We'll need you to cover it." I set down my fork slowly. $50,000 for a Christmas party. My mother jumped in. "It's not just a party, sweetie. It's a networking event for Serafina's career. All her influencer friends will be there. This could lead to major sponsorships." "I just gave you $20,000 for home renovations last month," I said quietly. "And we're grateful," my father said in that dismissive tone I knew too well. "But this is important for your sister's future. You understand career investments, don't you?" That's when Serafina looked up from her phone and said, "God, Aurora, why do you always have to make everything about money? It's so materialistic." The table went silent. I looked at my sister, at her designer outfit that I had paid for, at the phone in her hand that was on my family plan, at the chair she sat on in a house where I paid the property taxes. And I said nothing. I smiled tightly, nodded, and excused myself to the bathroom, where I stared at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. I didn't write the check for the Christmas party. I told them I needed to think about it. My father called me ungrateful. My mother said I was breaking her heart. Serafina posted a cryptic Instagram story about family members who abandon you when you need them most. I went back to New York and threw myself into work. But something had shifted. I started tracking every dollar I had sent home. I started saving screenshots of text messages. I started paying attention to what was said and what was unsaid. And the more I looked, the more I saw a pattern I had been willfully blind to for years. January came and went. February brought another crisis. Serafina needed emergency dental work after a cosmetic procedure went wrong. $20,000. I sent it, but this time I asked for receipts. My mother called me suspicious and hurtful. March was when I hired a financial advisor to look at my accounts. She took one look at my expenses and asked me if I was supporting a second household. When I explained about my family, she didn't hide her shock. "Aurora," she said gently, "this isn't helping. This is enabling financial abuse." I bristled at the term. Abuse felt too strong, too dramatic, but she pulled up charts and graphs, showing how my net worth should have grown over 8 years versus where it actually was. The difference was staggering. I should have been able to retire early. Instead, I was living paycheck to paycheck despite my salary because 70% of my income was going to Cedar Hollow. "What do I do?" I asked her. "Set boundaries," she said. "Cut them off if necessary. And talk to a therapist, because this is bigger than money." I did talk to a therapist. Dr. Sarah Chen helped me see what I had been avoiding. My family didn't love me. They loved what I could do for them. And the moment I stopped being useful, they would discard me without a second thought. I didn't want to believe her. But then May arrived, and with it came the charity auction. The weeks leading up to that auction had been tense. My father had called 3 times asking for money to cover a business loan. I had said no 3 times. Each refusal was met with increasing hostility. By the 3rd call, he was yelling at me, calling me a selfish disappointment who had forgotten where she came from. I hung up on him. It was the first time in my life I had hung up on my father. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing, but I felt something else too, something that felt almost like relief. That evening, my grandfather Arthur called. Grandpa Arthur was my father's father, a quiet man who had made his fortune in manufacturing and retired to a modest house in Cedar Hollow. He was the only family member who had ever asked about my life without immediately following it up with a request for money. "Aurora," he said, his voice grave, "I need to see you. There's something you should know about your parents and that house they live in." We met at a small cafe in Greenwich the next morning. Grandpa Arthur slid a folder across the table. Inside were property records, rental agreements, and bank statements. The house in Cedar Hollow, the house I had paid taxes and renovation costs on for years, wasn't owned by my parents. It was owned by Grandpa Arthur. He had been letting them live there rent-free since they got married, a gesture of generosity that was supposed to be temporary. They never paid me a dime, he said quietly. Not in 35 years. And 3 months ago, I discovered they've been secretly listing it on Airbnb when they travel pocketing $15,000 a month. I felt dizzy. They told me they owned it. They tell a lot of people a lot of things. He pulled out another document. There's more. Your father took out a loan using my house as collateral, forged my signature. The bank caught it, but the loan company he went through was less legitimate. He's into them for $200,000. My father was a criminal. The word felt surreal, but there it was. He had committed fraud forgery and was involved with what Grandpa Arthur believed were money laundering operations. And he had been using my money to make minimum payments while continuing to live his lifestyle. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Grandpa Arthur's eyes were sad but determined. Because I'm 78 years old, Aurora. I won't be around forever to clean up his messes. And because you deserve to know that every dollar you gave them went into a black hole of their own making. They've been using you, sweetheart, and I'm done letting it happen. He handed me a USB drive. Everything's on here. Bank records, loan documents, even recordings of conversations I've had with your father. I've been gathering evidence for 6 months. I was going to handle this myself, but then I realized you're the one who's been hurt the most. This is your choice now. You can walk away or you can fight back. I took the USB drive with numb fingers. What do you want me to do? I want you to be free, he said simply. Whatever that looks like for you. That night I sat in my apartment and went through every file on that drive. I saw loan applications in my father's handwriting with forged signatures. I saw bank transfers showing the Airbnb income being funneled into offshore accounts. I saw text messages between my parents discussing how to manipulate me into paying for Serafina's latest scheme. There was even a spreadsheet titled Aurora's Contributions, where they had calculated how much more they could extract from me before I caught on. I read until 3 a.m, and then I made a decision. I wasn't going to walk away quietly. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. If they wanted to disown me, fine. But they were going to face consequences for what they had done. The next morning, I contacted Caleb Thorne. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since I had broken up with him because I didn't have time for a relationship. He picked up on the second ring. Aurora. His voice was warm, concerned. Is everything okay? No, I said. Nothing is okay. And I need a lawyer. We met for coffee. I told him everything. I showed him the USB drive. I watched his expression shift from sympathy to shock to cold professional anger. This is fraud, he said flatly. Multiple counts. Your father could go to prison. I know, I said. What do I do? Caleb leaned back in his chair, studying me. First, you cut off all financial support immediately. Every account, every card, every automatic payment. Second, we get a forensic accountant to document exactly how much you've given them. Third, we file a civil suit for repayment. And fourth, we decide if you want to press criminal charges. They're my family, I whispered. They're criminals who happen to be related to you, Caleb corrected gently. There's a difference. But Aurora, this is your choice. I'll support whatever you decide. I looked at this man who had loved me, who I had pushed away because I was too busy being my family's ATM to build a real life. I want to fight back, I said. I want them to face consequences. And I want my life back. Then let's get started, Caleb said, and for the first time in months I felt like I could breathe. The first step was simple but terrifying. I went into my bank's mobile app and canceled every automatic payment, every linked account, every credit card where my family members were authorized users. My parents' mortgage payment, property taxes, utilities, Serafina's rent, her car payment, her health insurance, everything. With each cancellation, I felt lighter and more terrified in equal measure. By noon, my phone was exploding. 30 missed calls, 60 text messages. My mother, my father, Serafina, all in various states of panic and rage. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded all the messages to Caleb and turned off my phone. That afternoon, I met with a forensic accountant named Janet Rodriguez. She spent 4 hours going through my financial records, and by the end, her face was grim. In 8 years, you've given them $473,000, she said, not counting gifts, dinners you've paid for, or the times you've covered their credit card bills. This is just documented transfers. Nearly $500,000. I felt sick. Can I get it back? I asked. In theory, yes. In practice, it depends on if they have any assets. But we can sue for repayment and put liens on their property. Well, your grandfather's property that they've been fraudulently using. The next morning, I reached out to an old college friend named Olivia Chen. Olivia had gone into cybersecurity and worked for a firm that specialized in digital forensics. Over dinner, I explained the situation. I need to know everything, I told her. Every account, every transaction, every secret they've been keeping. Can you help? Olivia was quiet for a long moment. What you're asking for is technically legal if we're gathering evidence for a lawsuit. But Aurora, are you sure? Once you see everything, you can't unsee it. I'm sure, I said. It took Olivia 3 days. When she handed me her report, she looked troubled. Your family is worse than you thought, she said quietly. The report revealed that my father had 7 different shell companies, all bankrupt. He had been running a Ponzi scheme with local investors, using their money to maintain the Cedar Hollow lifestyle. The loan he had taken out using Grandpa Arthur's house was from a company with ties to organized crime. My mother had been hiding a gambling addiction with losses totaling over $100,000 at various casinos. And Serafina's influencer career was entirely fabricated. She had been buying followers, buying engagement, even paying for fake sponsorships to make herself look more successful than she was. They're broke, Olivia said. Completely broke. Every dollar you gave them went to pay off debts, fuel addictions, and maintain appearances. And they still owe close to $1 million to various creditors. I should have been surprised. I should have been devastated. Instead, I felt oddly vindicated. Everything I had suspected, every gut feeling I had ignored was true. My family didn't just use me. They had been actively deceiving me for years. That's when I decided to go to the charity auction. I wanted one last night of normalcy before everything exploded. I wanted to do something good to prove to myself that I was more than just a victim of my family's schemes. I bought a new dress, put on my armor of makeup and confidence, and went to support a cause I believed in. And then came the text message that changed everything. After I walked out of that gallery, I went home and did something I had never done before. I documented everything publicly. I wrote a long post on LinkedIn detailing financial abuse in families, how success can make you a target, and how difficult it is to recognize exploitation when it comes from people who are supposed to love you. I didn't name my family, but I shared my story in broad strokes. The post went viral. Within hours, I had thousands of comments from people sharing their own experiences. Major news outlets reached out for interviews. My inbox filled with messages of support and similar stories. I had touched a nerve I didn't know existed. And my family lost their minds. My mother showed up at my office the next morning. Security called me before letting her up, and I made the choice to see her. We met in a conference room with glass walls so everyone could see us. She was crying before she even sat down. How could you do this to us? She wailed. How could you humiliate your family like this? I didn't name you, I said calmly. But if you're feeling humiliated, maybe you should examine why. You cut off all our accounts. Do you know what you've done? Your father can't make his loan payments. Serafina had her car repossessed. The electric company is threatening to shut off our power. You mean Grandpa Arthur's power, I corrected. In the house that belongs to him that you never paid rent on, that you illegally listed on Airbnb for profit. My mother's face went white. He told you. He showed me everything, Mom. The forged signatures, the shell companies, the gambling debts, Dad's loan from people who probably break kneecaps for late payments. I know all of it. She switched tactics immediately from tears to anger. We gave you everything. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. You gave me the bare minimum required by law, I said coldly. You fed me and clothed me because you had to. But every dollar I earned, every success I achieved was despite you, not because of you. And for 8 years, I repaid your minimal parenting with almost $500,000. So let's not talk about who owes whom. My mother stood up, trembling with rage. You're dead to this family. Good, I said. That's been the plan since Dad's text message. But here's what's going to happen next. Grandpa Arthur is filing for eviction. Caleb Thorne is filing a civil suit for repayment of funds obtained under false pretenses. And if Dad doesn't deal with his loan shark problem, I'm going to the police with evidence of his Ponzi scheme. You wouldn't dare. Try me, I said, and I meant it. My mother stormed out and I returned to work. My hands were shaking, but I felt powerful in a way I never had before. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was fighting back. That night, Serafina went nuclear on social media. She posted a 15-minute video crying about how her sister had abandoned the family, cut off their money, and was trying to destroy them out of jealousy. She tagged me in everything. Within hours, my Instagram was flooded with hate messages from her followers calling me selfish, greedy, and cruel. But something unexpected happened. The comment section turned into a war zone, but not against me. My LinkedIn post had been screenshot and shared across platforms. People who had read my story recognized me from Serafina's tags and came to my defense. They called her out for financial abuse. They posted evidence of her buying followers. Someone even found her Airbnb listing for Grandpa Arthur's house and reported it. By morning, Serafina's video had been taken down for violating community guidelines about harassment. She had lost 3 sponsorship deals, and her follower count was dropping by thousands. Caleb called me that afternoon. "Your father's trying to file a countersuit," he said, claiming you owe him for raising you and that you agreed to support the family. "Do we have anything in writing that proves otherwise?" I asked. "Better. We have 8 years of one-sided transactions with no contracts, no loan agreements, and no evidence of any agreement on your part. Plus, your grandfather's evidence of fraud. Your father's lawyer is going to advise him to settle. What if he doesn't? Then we go to court and he goes to prison. His choice." The next few weeks were chaos. Grandpa Arthur officially filed for eviction, giving my parents 30 days to vacate his property. My mother tried to rally her church community against us, but Grandpa Arthur had been a generous donor for 40 years. The pastor called her in for a meeting and suggested she find a new congregation. My father's Ponzi scheme unraveled when 3 of his investors filed complaints with the state attorney general. An investigation was launched. The loan sharks started circling, and Dad had to hire a criminal defense attorney he couldn't afford. Serafina tried to reinvent herself as a victim of family drama, but her authenticity was gone. Brands didn't want to work with someone embroiled in financial scandals. Her engagement numbers cratered. She moved into a friend's apartment and got a job at a retail store, her first job ever at 25 years old. Meanwhile, I was thriving. Caleb and I started seeing each other again, taking it slow but real. My work performance improved without the constant stress of family drama. I started therapy to work through years of manipulation and guilt, and I began sleeping through the night for the first time in years. The confrontation I had been building toward happened in late August in a courtroom in Connecticut. Caleb had filed a civil suit on my behalf for repayment of funds, and my father had been forced to respond or face default judgment. Grandpa Arthur had joined the suit, suing for fraud and forgery. My entire family showed up. My mother in her church clothes trying to look respectable. My father in an expensive suit he could no longer afford, radiating false confidence. Serafina with her phone out trying to live stream until the bailiff confiscated it. The proceeding was not what they expected. Caleb was brilliant and methodical. He presented 8 years of bank transfers with no documentation of loans or agreements. He showed emails where my parents explicitly referred to my payments as gifts, only to turn around and demand more. He played recordings that Grandpa Arthur had made where my father admitted to forging signatures and running fake businesses. The judge was not sympathetic. She had clearly seen these patterns before. When my father tried to argue that children owe their parents financial support, she cut him off. "Mr. Vance, adult children are not ATM machines. Nothing in the evidence suggests your daughter agreed to indefinite financial support. In fact, the evidence suggests a pattern of exploitation and fraud. I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiffs." The judgment was for $600,000, including interest and legal fees. My father's face went gray. My mother started crying. Serafina looked like she might throw up. But the judge wasn't done. She referred my father's case to the district attorney's office for criminal fraud charges. And she issued an order prohibiting any member of my family from contacting me directly or indirectly for 2 years. As we left the courthouse, I saw them huddled together on the steps, looking lost and small. For just a moment, I felt sorry for them. And then I remembered every time they had made me feel small, every time they had demanded more, every time they had chosen to exploit rather than love me. I walked past them without a word, Caleb's hand warm in mine, and I didn't look back. The aftermath was better than I could have imagined. My parents were forced to sell everything they had to pay their debts. They moved into a small apartment in a less desirable part of town. My father avoided prison by agreeing to a plea deal that included probation, restitution, and community service. My mother had to get a job for the first time in 30 years working as a receptionist at a dental office. Serafina's influencer career died completely. She couldn't recover from the scandal, and she didn't have the work ethic to rebuild. Last I heard, she was working at a department store and living with roommates, finally experiencing the real world she had been shielded from her entire life. Grandpa Arthur got his house back and promptly sold it, using the money to fund a trust that would ensure his care in his final years. He moved into a retirement community where he plays cards and tells anyone who will listen about his brilliant granddaughter. As for me, I took the settlement money and did something my family would never understand. I started a foundation called Second Chances, dedicated to helping people escape financial abuse from family members. We provide legal aid, financial counseling, therapy, resources, and emergency grants to help people establish independence. In our first year, we helped over 200 people cut ties with toxic families and rebuild their lives. Caleb and I got engaged on the anniversary of the day. I canceled all those automatic payments. He says it's the day I chose myself, and he wanted to celebrate that. We're planning a small wedding with people who actually love us, not our bank accounts. I still see my therapist every week. Healing from decades of emotional abuse doesn't happen overnight. Some days I still feel guilty. Some days I still question if I did the right thing. But then I remember the spreadsheet my parents kept calculating how much more they could extract from me, and the guilt fades. I'm 32 years old now, and I finally own my own home. It's a brownstone in Brooklyn with a garden where I grow tomatoes and herbs. It's mine, paid for with money I didn't give away to people who didn't appreciate it. Every morning I wake up in a space that belongs to me and I feel peace. My family tried to reach out when the 2-year order expired. A letter from my mother arrived full of apologies and requests to reconcile. I read it once and threw it away. Some relationships can't be repaired, and more importantly, some relationships aren't worth repairing. I don't owe them forgiveness. I don't owe them a second chance. I don't owe them anything at all. That's the thing about toxic families. They condition you to believe that blood means obligation, that loyalty means sacrifice, that love means giving until there's nothing left. But real love doesn't keep score. Real love doesn't demand payment. Real love doesn't exploit your success and then discard you when you set boundaries. I learned that I am not obligated to set myself on fire to keep other people warm. I learned that choosing myself is not selfish, it's survival. I learned that the family you create is more important than the family you're born into. And I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. So here's my message to anyone listening who's in a similar situation. If your family only calls when they need money, if they guilt you for having boundaries, if they take credit for your success but blame you for their failures, if they make you feel small so they can feel big, listen carefully. You are not the problem. You are not ungrateful. You are not selfish. You are being used, and you deserve better. It will be hard to walk away. It will feel like you're tearing yourself apart. You will question everything. You will feel guilty. You will wonder if you're the bad guy in someone else's story. But I promise you, on the other side of that guilt is freedom. On the other side of that pain is peace. On the other side of that toxic relationship is a life where you matter, where your needs are important, where your success is your own. You are not an ATM machine. You are not a backup plan. You are not a resource to be exploited. You are a person who deserves to be loved for who you are, not what you can provide. And if your family can't see that, then they don't deserve access to your life. So I'll ask you this. Have you ever been in a relationship where you gave everything and got nothing in return? Have you ever had to choose between your own well-being and someone else's expectations? Have you ever walked away from people who were supposed to love you because staying was slowly killing you? If any part of my story felt like your story, I need you to stop scrolling right now. You're not imagining this. You're not being dramatic. You're not ungrateful or selfish or broken. What's happening to you is real, it has a name, and you deserve better. Go to the comments. Type 3 words, "This is me." That's all. No story, no explanation, just those 3 words. Because right now someone else is reading these comments feeling alone, wondering if they're the only one. Your 3 words will tell them they're not. You might save a life today without even knowing it. Now here's what I need from you. If my story gave you even the smallest spark of hope, if you felt something shift inside you, then hit that like button. Not for me. For the next person who needs to find this video. The algorithm will push this to more people who are trapped and searching. Your one click could be someone's lifeline. Subscribe to this channel because this isn't the last story. I'm going to keep exposing how toxic families operate, the manipulation tactics they use, and how to break free. Every video is a roadmap. Every story is proof that you can survive this. And comment with 1 word. Just one. Type trapped if you're still in it. Type walking if you're planning your exit. Type free if you made it out. Let's show each other we're not alone. Let's build a community they can never touch. Here's what they don't want you to know. Family doesn't get a free pass to destroy you. Blood doesn't excuse abuse. And love, real love, never costs you everything you are. You don't owe them your mental health. You don't owe them your money. You don't owe them access to your life if they're using it to hurt you. So make the choice. Today. Right now, set the boundary, block the number, cancel the payment, walk out the door. Whatever your version of freedom looks like, take the first step. Your life is waiting on the other side of that fear, and I promise you it's more beautiful than anything they ever let you dream. Take your power back. You've always deserved it.